friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I have something fun today. This is a pack of 8 fountain pens from Five Below. So I got this for $5. That makes it out to be, what, 5 over 8 is 63 cents each, around 62.5. So that's pretty good if you ask me, at least for something to experiment on, you know? Before using your pen, follow below instructions. Unscrew and separate the barrel. Throw away the paper from the pen barrel. Flip the ink cartridge. Now insert the cartridge in the neck firmly as per direction given in figure 4. After you hear click, the ink cartridge is punctured. Screw the barrel into the neck, and then please note the ink cartridge's bore diameter is 2.6 millimeters. Okay, made in China. So these are probably like knockoff Lamy Safaris, and I know some people don't like dupes and whatnot, but I figured at least I'd give it a try. It was cool to see it in Five Below because it's kind of giving me a sign that fountain pens are growing. I mean, it's just in a generic back to school section of the store, and honestly, when I was there, I think I bought the second or third box. There were still a lot left, so I think people still aren't that interested in it, but if this can help people get into the hobby, then I'm all for it. Plus the colors are so pretty. It came in one big set. We're gonna test them all out and see if it's even writable. How do we want to do this? We'll just have at it. So it's quite thin. I don't know what it reminds me of. I guess I have this Tombow Fudenosuke brush pen right next to me, so it's similar to that. I don't think it's even the thickness of a Platinum Preppy. It's kind of like a regular ballpoint or like a uni ball, but it's pretty similar in thickness to this. The cap, this is not normal for me to experience for a beginner fountain pen. Like, I think the Schneider and the Pilot Metropolitan, they're very different from this. The Platinum Preppy is pretty close in weight to this, but anyways, the clip is sturdy, and then I'm guessing it's a snap. Yeah, it is. So you can post it too. It has a clear cap, and it is in the shade of color that the pen is. This is actually really pretty. I hope it writes well. The nib is definitely one of those Lamy shaped ones. So it says F. I'm guessing it's a fine. We've got our tines and our breather hole. The feed is pretty similar to a Lamy's too, but it doesn't have that tri-grip. So I think some people will actually enjoy that. They said to unscrew the barrel, see what's inside. I said to remove the piece of paper. So there's a piece of paper preventing you from putting the ink cartridge together with it. So this little baby cartridge comes out, and I'm pretty sure it's similar to the standard international. Here's one that I got from Benu. Height-wise, they're almost the same, but they're actually a little bit different. And they do write on the box that it's 2.6 millimeters. So I do think it's a little different. So I don't know if it's a standard international or if you would have to find one a little bit smaller. 2.6. I'm repeating that in case you want to look for one and you end up throwing the packaging away. This looks like a pretty nice blue. I think what we're gonna do is wash out the pen, because that's what I always do. Clean out the nib and feed a little bit before I put this in. But if you are pretty new to fountain pens, this is kind of what they're like. You get an ink cartridge, or you get a converter where you can use your own ink. But in this case, you're given a cartridge, and you're also given this nib, which is this sharp metal part, and then there's a feed inside, and ink travels down, and it takes time to travel until it reaches the nib, and then you can write with it. And the important thing to remember is that a good working fountain pen does not require any pressure. So you don't need to jam your nib into the page. I always tell people nib facing the sky is how you should hold these, but you should be able to just write, and it should be able to flow without applying pressure. If you're applying pressure and you see the tines separating in that line in the middle, that means you're doing too much and you might damage it. So I'm gonna go clean all these out and then we can plug them up and see what the ink looks like. All right, so the reason I'm going over this is because you might actually be a beginner searching this up, and if you are, welcome to the fountain pen world. But I like to dip the nib and feed section in water just to get any machine oils or dust or anything like that that might be getting into the section. And then I'm going to use a paper towel. Ideally you use something that doesn't have too many fibers kicking up, and you're going to dry that out, and then we're going to plug this in. What you want to do is hear the click. You're going to push until you hear the click. That's how you know it's in. And then usually you can just pull it out or twist a little to get it out, but if you see that little channel inside, it should wrap itself around that. There we go, there's the click. So what I like to do is to just set it aside and let the ink run down and saturate the feed. Allow time for it to do that. I know I've seen some people, when I first got into fountain pens, they said to give this ink cartridge a little squeeze to let the ink flow. I personally wouldn't recommend it because I've squeezed too hard before and actually broken the plastic on the ink cartridge. So I personally am going to just let it do its thing. I also noticed that there's this silver trim along this barrel, which I kind of like. But in the meantime, we can do all the other ones. This one is a pastel pink. These are actually really pretty colors, and they don't feel that bad in the thinness because it feels like they kind of made it so that, I guess if you're used to using regular pens, like gel pens or ballpoints, then you wouldn't notice too much of a difference for this comfort level. So once again, we have, oh, this is so pretty. This looks like coral pink. Whoa! It pushed out some of the water that was in the nib and feed section when I inserted the ink cartridge. Interesting. So I have a feeling that it's actually gonna be pretty quick to saturate the feed. For fountain pens, you definitely want to either store it nib up or on its side. Upside down is not usually recommended, although sometimes I like to do it like this, against, prop it against something like that to kind of maybe help gravity bring the ink down. This one is kind of a peachy color, a light peach. You can also soak it when it's attached to the pen too. The only reason I did the section is because we have to take all of these out. These are actually really small for what it is because there's so much room. You could almost fit another cartridge in there. Actually, can you? It never really occurred to me, but I saw the Sailor Fude de Manen and they actually store two in there. So let's see if we could put this one in backwards and then put this one on. Oh my gosh! You can! That's wonderful. I'm gonna see if you can find a replacement cartridge. If not, I'm gonna see if you can buy a converter. So once you run out of ink, you're gonna wanna refill it either by buying new ink cartridges or buying a converter. The converters will often look like, let me find one. This is a Sailor, but it has a similar idea across many converter brands. It'll have a plastic section, maybe a metal, and then a little twistable piston inside. So if you can see this piston moving when I'm twisting it, it goes down, and then if you twist up, you can draw up ink. So ideally this fits into your nib and feed section. This one probably won't fit, so I'm not going to force it. But you would then be able to submerge it into ink, twist to draw up, or twist down to expel. Cool. Let's do the rest of these. This is a pastel yellow. I didn't realize that the ink colors, wow, this is actually difficult to insert the ink cartridges. Pastel yellow, I didn't realize that the ink was gonna be different. I thought it was black ink for every pen, but this is kind of fun. Like, I've never bought 8 pens in one sitting. Oh, this one's a little sandy. I guess the manufacturing is not the greatest for a dollar store quality, but I really hope they write well, because this would be a fantastic starting point for a lot of people. They look like they're all fine nibs. This is a lighter pastel. I would say this one's more like banana yellow, and this one is more pastel yellow. But why is the ink cartridge lime green? What the heck? Oh, come on. Okay. You don't want to put too much pressure on there. I feel like it could break. This is a really good deal for fountain pens though, because a nice beginner one can start around $10 nowadays. You can get Jin House, which are Chinese brand pens, but I personally have not had the greatest experience with them. So I'd rather buy the Japanese beginner pen from Pilot that you can actually pretty much almost guarantee that it will write, or platinum. I'm gonna have to make a beginner fountain pen video one day soon so I can recommend the best beginner pens. Oh, this is fun though. Oh wait, oh no, I think I forgot to clean half of these while I was talking. If the ink already traveled down, when you dip it, you'll see ink actually coming out. See, look, I just wiped it on the paper towel and ink is already coming out. That's a nice green. I don't think I cleaned this one either. Sometimes, if you are impatient, you can kind of kickstart it. If you dip it into a bottle of ink of that same color, that'll definitely kickstart it, or if you dip it into some water. But when you dip it into water, you might find that the first few scribbles from the pen are kind of diluted or just watery. What you may also notice is that sometimes the ink will dry out and it'll get stuck in the nib and feed section. So in order to combat that, you should just take it and then clean it out in some water. Maybe take the section apart. Not the whole, don't pull the nib and feed out. Only do that if you really know what you're doing. Just take this out. You can submerge it in water overnight, or you can run it under tap, or you can use like a syringe and push water in and out. And if you are already an audience member from my YouTube channel, you probably already noticed stuff. But like I said, maybe there is a beginner watching, and I would like to try to be as inclusive as possible. So that's our final one. I'm excited. I've never seen them use such a large piece of paper to keep you from inserting the cartridge. So we're gonna take my notebook from our studio. It's in a leather cover from Dear Emie. This is an apple green color, and then I kind of want to change the cover for this, but I decided I would try to make the most out of this notebook because I'm not in love with it. But I figured I'd start doing some pen swatches and stuff in here. Ink and pen. Here we go. And I like to use my stickers from my Etsy shop, Two Sad Dumplings Co. I like to do this new pen day type of thing. Okay, let's start with the pink one. Or no. Yeah, I think no, it was the blue one. Yeah, it was the blue one. Hopefully this works. It does not. The ink did not travel through yet. Sometimes you just gotta scrabble until it does. So you can kind of see a very, very faint light blue coming through. And that's actually from the water. And you can also grab a paper towel and kind of it's to break the tension so that some of it actually comes through. But I don't know if these are just light colors. It works. It feels like, I don't think I like the up strokes, but the down strokes are nice. And there's definitely feedback. It could use a little more weight, so I'm gonna post the cap. When you put the cap on the end, it's called posting. Oh, it kind of reminds me of gel pens because they're so pastel. I really like this actually. So this is Five Below. What is this called? 8 count color fountain pens. Yeah, the bore diameter, which I'm assuming is the part where you insert it into the nib and feed section, it apparently is 2.6 millimeters. So Five Below 8 count fountain pens. Today's date is 8/17/25, and we're just gonna write a note for ourselves. Cartridge, bore diameter 2.6 millimeters. Just in case I throw out the box and I need it one day. Wow. I likey. Was it pink next? Oh my gosh, we're gonna have to start up all of these. So my paper towel's a little wet and it's kind of helping out. Let me dip it in some water too. One thing when you are inking up, pretend this is a bottle of ink, you want to submerge it past the nib, like up to here. I thought when I first got these pens, you had to do it past the breather hole, but you actually want it to reach the feed too. So you want to submerge it all the way and then just wipe off any excess ink. I think for calligraphy dip pens, it's a little different, which is what I started with, but yeah. Come on, this is gonna take a while. I'm just running it with a little bit of pressure because I know how much pens can handle now, but you might want to be cautious if you are new to this. Let me just start writing. What if we sacrifice one for the team and we squeeze this, the tag? I think it's too hard to squeeze. I wouldn't want to put any more pressure. Yeah, I'm afraid of breaking it because I've definitely cracked one before, but I am a little impatient. Sometimes it could take, oh, it kind of worked. Sometimes it can take half an hour, even overnight. Ideally, I don't know. It's taken, sometimes overnight is your best option, which I know is kind of annoying, but I'm pretty sure you can still start it up if you use water. There we go. There's the pink one looking pretty good. I wonder how well these hold without drying out. There's no like hole in the cap that you normally see for breathing, but I don't think it's airtight. You might be able to eyedropper these because there's no, oh, it has round ends, but the bottom has this little pit here, but I don't think it actually goes into the pen. This is gonna take a while. Let's see if dipping it helps. Okay, so dipping it in the water kind of brought some ink out onto the paper towel. There we go. Okay, that's still not working. We'll get there. Be patient. Fine writing tools require patience and a little bit of slowing down and using tools in your analog life. It'll be good for you in the long run. I was kind of upset today and ended up removing all of the social media apps from my phone, including YouTube. And I will just tell you right now that it has offered me a lot of peace today that I haven't had in a while. Alright, this one is a very light peach apricot color, and I think it'll just take a little longer to saturate. We'll come back to it. Maybe once we get the other ones started up, it will be a little better. Where did I put the cap? That is one problem that you might run into when you join fountain pens. You're gonna lose your cap unless you post it onto the end. Hello? Oh, it's over here. Okay, and then we got this yellow. Kind of looks like highlighter yellow. Oh, it's probably already started because I went and dipped these into the ink or into the water when I was talking earlier. I don't know how dark this can go, but maybe we can slow down and do a more concentrated swatch. Very light. Wow, this is like banana yellow is what I would call it. What about this yellow? Is it gonna come out lime green? This is the prettiest paper towel I've had in a while for this. I started buying the Viva brand because they're very spongy and cloth-like, but I really need to switch to cloth. Let's just soak up some of the water there. You might find that a few things impact your fountain pen experience, including the type of paper, because some paper the ink might bleed through, and some papers have a coating on there, so it's easier to glide on instead of catching your tines on, because it might catch and then pick up fibers and you get little tiny fibers stuck in between your tines, which is okay. You can just kind of dip it in water for it to come out, but it's definitely a different experience depending on each paper. And then the other thing is the ink. Different types of ink will give you different ink flow. Some inks write very wet, so they just come out very smoothly from your pen, and some inks are more viscous or higher viscosity. Why does this look blue? This is weird. It's a dark green, but it's coming out blue. On the paper towel, it's dark green, so it might just be the water. Oh wow, that one's nice. Sometimes I find that if the ink is too light, like too pastel, then it will be hard to, I just dipped it. It will be hard to read and you will feel like you need to apply more pressure, but that's just the ink not really being legible. But the more you get into the hobby, the more interested you will become in finding the right ink and pen combo. Or you might just, use these and be happy for life. And that's perfectly fine too. You can have one fountain pen and be a part of the hobby. You can have 100, 1,000 fountain pens and still be part of the hobby. I don't believe in the art of gatekeeping. I don't think that's nice. It's not even an art, the act of gatekeeping. Why not spread the fountain pen joy to everyone? We're gonna have to come back to that purple one. So here's the black. I hope it's black and not gray. Is it going to be black? Okay, so what I'm gonna do is make sure that all of these are perfectly primed and saturated with the ink, and then we'll come back and do the closest pen and ink swatches that I can, so you can get an idea of what they actually look like, because a lot of these are mixed with water right now. So we'll come back. Okay, we are back and all of the pens work. I do think the pastel, really light ones, I think they are just, what's the word? I think because they're so light, they make the flow harder. But I do feel like light inks are drier, so they have a less smooth flow, if that makes sense. We're gonna do this again, and I forgot to mention that if you run out of ink and you want to use a different type of ink, you can just pull it out, use a syringe to flush water into this and clean it out, and then use a syringe to insert ink, and then you can use a new ink. Because I might do that for some of these really light pastel ones. I know a lot of people probably don't like the legibility of the really light inks, but these definitely remind me of gel pens from back in the elementary school days. If you scribble close in one swatch, then you can kind of get a better idea of what the ink looks like. If your scribbles are more far apart, then you might not be able to see if it's flowing really well. But this one flows really nicely. This is, I don't even know what to write. We're just gonna do 5 below in cursive. I don't know why I did that in cursive. 5 below. And this is in a fine nib. They're all in fine nibs. And they don't have names, which is kind of a bummer, but that's okay. And then some people like to do reverse writing, so they flip the pen over so that the nib is backwards, and see how well the pen does in reverse. And that's actually really nice. And then we can also zoom you in and do downstrokes. So from top to bottom, bottom to top, left to right, right to left. And people like to do these, they call them figure eights, I call them S's in my head. But this gives you an idea of whether or not your tines have a problem. But because this is so uniform, I don't think we have any flow issues. Sometimes the tines can be misaligned, so your strokes are going to be inconsistent. And then we can do a little dry time test. The one thing about fountain pens is that sometimes the ink takes longer to dry, so you might accidentally be smearing on the page, but you can easily combat this by putting another sheet of paper or a cardstock to kind of soak up some of the ink before you close your notebook. So the light blue was very, very nice. And the pink is actually really nice too. However, I think the text kind of might be too light for some people. Once again, we have a fine nib. Gonna do reverse. We're gonna test downstrokes, upstrokes, side strokes, and that. You can also test diagonal strokes, but okay. Definitely not a permanent ink, but that's okay. Now we're starting to get into the not so fun territory, because I think this one still flows pretty well, but it's a little annoying for the, maybe you're too far zoomed in. I find this ink to be a little less legible, so it's a little annoying for me. But I think maybe for coloring it would be nice. And then it also feels like the tines are worse, but it might just be because the ink isn't my favorite. People count for the dry times. I don't. It's like a second, you know, whatever. I'm sure there's a better way to do that, but I don't really care. So this one is the yellow. The yellow is more saturated, so I think it's pretty good. I think the only complaint would be the light inks for a lot of these, because all of these nibs seem to be writing perfectly fine. Pretty standard with what I would expect. I'm really happy that all of them work. I think this one is more of a lime green than a yellow, and that's why they gave us a lime green ink cartridge. But it's very pastel green. 5 below. Yeah, I swear the lines, the font is smaller than the, I would call this an extra fine. I think this pen might have tighter tines than the others. This one might need tuning a little bit for my liking. Next we've got, ooh, it's kind of like a turquoise, but yeah, the darker the ink, the more saturated it usually is, and the easier the flow and easier to read. Would you guys test out these pens? Do you have a Five Below near you? I went back a second time and saw that more people had bought them, but still there was a huge selection. So I don't think people are really itching to buy them. If I was going to school, I would have been so excited. I mean, rainbow color pens, fountain pens, you can be fancy. You can color coordinate your tasks, one for each subject. Are you kidding me? That'd be amazing. This purple is like a medium flow, I would think. And then finally we have the black, which I think is actually more of a gray. And then this is actually my favorite. Maybe the blue one too, because they both seem to be writing the easiest. But like I was saying, no pressure is needed to press on the tines. Oh, and one more thing for fountain pens. These ones have a snap cap, meaning they're like your regular pens where you just close it like that. But a lot of fountain pens that are, especially when you go further up in the price range, they have a twist cap. So this is an Esterbrook SD, first pen that was next to me, but it has a twist. So don't go trying out people's pens and trying to pull the cap, because you might break their pen. Okay, so I'm very happy with these. Look how many pens I get to have now. I feel like a glutton. We've got 8 brand new, very, very pretty pens. If Sailor came out in these colorways, I mean, they would have my heart. I'm really, really happy with how these turned out. I don't like the lighter colors here, so that would be 3, but that's still 5 pens that work right out of the box with no tuning. That's basically $1 per pen, and I think that's pretty spectacular, especially if there was a kid in your life that you wanted to enable for an affordable price. That would be amazing. Or even just your best friend, you know, maybe they would want a handful of affordable pens. So run on over to Five Below, check out their back to school section. This is not sponsored, but I'm pretty happy with these. If you are interested in seeing more videos on fountain pens, you can check out these videos here. And until then, I hope you have a beautiful day and happy late summer, early fall. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.